Hello YouTube, welcome back. What you're seeing is a fairly peaceful picture of cattle playing in Corndale, and we're recently post-flood in March 2022, and all this area was underwater just a few weeks ago. And looking at that by itself, you'd think it's normal. The fences are intact, the grass is green, the cattle aren't back obviously yet, and I'm sure the ground's a little bit muddy. But you don't have to look far to see the ravages of the flood. Over here to my left is just an enormous pile of dirt mounded up on Corndale Road, washed off topsoil from somewhere, presumably, that might have been covering the roads or the gutters. It's just been left there as a depot. And over here is a makeshift tip of home contents, roofing, appliances, even the odd wheelbarrow and things that have just been the waste left at people's homes in the flood. And it's heartbreaking to see. These are people's lives. You know, I'm not going to go through Lismore and show you the remains of people's homes, that sort of thing. I don't do that. I haven't been in Lismore, in fact, since I came back up here, because I just don't want to tour human suffering, particularly while those same humans that have lost their homes are busy trying to salvage whatever they can from the remains. There is a lot of human suffering in Lismore, and it's a town that I've grown to love, and it's very sad. So that's the backdrop for this particular episode. You could put this one squarely in the category of an episode I didn't want to make. But what's the story at Nutkin Farm? Well, here we are back on the farm, and you can see there's a fair bit of grass in the headlands, although, you know, the rows are okay. Certainly the rain, which reached a peak of 620 mils in one day at the end of February, has done things like carve ruts in the driveway. Again, these things I find is very hard to show you on camera, but you can see a few deep ruts in the driveway, which I've since mown around. And yeah, they're going to have to be filled, but we're in a situation where all the gravel suppliers have basically been commandeered by Lismore Council, and it'll be a while before private properties can access that. So I've been buying a few emergency bags of gravel from Bunnings. Not an economical way to buy driveway gravel when you need lots of it. But I guess we don't farm for the driveways, we farm for the trees. And what's happening in the actual trees themselves? Well, Nutkin Farm escaped fairly lightly, I have to say. There were very few there's no fallen trees. I've seen one fallen branch out of all my over, between 2,500 and 3,000 trees, which is a pretty good record for the trees themselves. But there's been wash. You can see there's a bit of nut dropping in the old blocks, but a lot of it's old stuff that's been basically uncovered by the rain, with a few green nuts dropping in there. And the disappointing thing that I'm seeing walking along these rows is root exposure, which really, is greater than before. How much greater, I can't measure, but I'm seeing roots where I never used to see roots before. And the hay raking exercise that I did in spring, I can't say the stuff's entirely gone. I still think it was beneficial, and there's been less root exposure as a result of it. But yeah, look, there's some definite erosion there. Now, to pile onto the misfortunes, the grants I was hoping to access, which would have allowed me to bring in large amounts of organic matter for these trees, aren't available to me or to anyone else who earns more than 50% of their income from a non-farming venture. And that's causing a big stink with residents in the Northern Rivers who own farms, because so many of us have a second string to our bows, for risk management, or just because we have multiple careers. It's not just the hobby farmers, it's the locals as well. And, they've been through a couple of tough years, which would kind of lead to them earning more than half their income from their other stream of income, and now they're being told you can't access relief for your farm, even though everyone's farm erodes the same way. So yeah, there's some lobbying going on, but you know, it seems to me unlikely that they'll extend that flood relief to people who don't depend 100% on the farm for their income. So my farm and so many others like it have been left in a state where the nuts are starting to fall, but the surface of the soil has not been prepared to pick up that harvest. I can mow and I can get this grass down, but what it really needs is a good old-fashioned mulch. Right now, if I could get a mulch done before the next lot of rain hits, I would get the mulch done, partly because it would smooth out some surfaces, it would get the surface ready for harvesting, and even though there's a few green nuts on the ground, there aren't really enough to say, look, it's not worth the effort, because down the track, when you do actually harvest the main drop of nuts, you'll get a much better pickup. You'll pay less for the harvesting because it can be done more quickly and efficiently, and you'll actually smooth out some of the ruts caused by the rain. And I'm not sure that increases resilience, but it certainly helps, I guess, smooth out the damage a little. So yeah, now I can show you next what the situation in block 1, which is actually quite different to this, but has its own challenges. So stay tuned. And here I am in block 1, my pet block. As you can see, the grass has absolutely grown. It's been a blessing in the heavy rain, in the sense that it stopped water from causing any erosion at all, really, and around the tree trunks I see absolutely no sign of erosion. This is why you need grass in your interrows, and the trees here have done well. They're starting to drop a decent crop, but what do? You can't harvest it when it's like this. You've got to get the grass down. But the paradox is, I guess, you can lose nuts in the process, because you could mow the nut if you had the mower setting too low, or your wheels can run over the nut on soft soil and push the nuts into the ground, where they will never be harvested, or at least not without a great deal of difficulty. So what do you do? Well, I can show you what I've done and what I've been advised to do by my contractor who harvests nuts. He basically says, look, go along the rows, and you can see here there's still an effect of the herbicide, because you know, here the grass hasn't really grown back, and thank goodness for that. And you can see nuts on the ground, not so many on this particular tree, and there's plenty of nuts still on the tree ready to fall. But what you do is you take your mower and go along the rows with its side discharge, if you have a side discharge mower, throwing grass away from the trunk and into the interrow. And it's sort of the opposite of what you do in the growing season, where you want the grass to sort of nestle up against the roots and provide a bit of mulching. But here on my mower, you're looking at the side discharge. It's a right discharge mower, where any grass you cut with its 3 blades, it's a 6-foot cutting path, doesn't go out the left, it goes out the right. So you go up and down next to the trees, throwing grass into the center of the row, and you keep mowing towards the middle, which is what you see here. And it looks nice now. It certainly looked a little bit unruly before, and in amongst all the niceness, well, you know, there's certainly some slippery ground. Mowing the lawn now in a sunny period, obviously, you know, you can't do it until it is a bit sunny, but it's well worth doing then, because, you know, tomorrow, for example, we've got 32 degrees and sunny. That's going to really dry out the soil a little bit, and of course, if you cut the grass and expose the soil a bit more, the drying process will be much better. But you know, plenty of turns I've made on the soil here, I go for a slip. The soil is really still quite wet, but in some rows more than others. But you know, you've got to obviously know how to use a zero-turn mower. But if you're using a zero-turn mower, because it has literally 2 wheels to do everything for you, and 2 dumb wheels that won't save your life at all. And there's a really good example of me actually, in this case, going up a hill and being unable to get any traction at all, even with deep bear claw tyres, because they fill up with mud and the tyres just become a great big sort of slimy donut filled with mud. But you've got to do it. You just got to do it really very carefully, and if you do pull up a bit of dirt like that or a bit of grass like that, well, there's plenty of grass to spare, guys. I wouldn't cry about it. So these are the flood recovery things to do on a farm. I mean, ordinarily by now this should have looked like a golf course for a month before harvest, and you know, there's some nut on the ground, particularly in block 1. These trees here, I wish I knew their variety, have dropped some really good nut. You know, nothing wrong with it. There it is, green and in its shell. Good quality stuff. How to pick it up? Well, look, the contractors who do people's work have been in all sorts of strife in terms of it's been too rainy to actually do harvest pickups. But my particular harvest contractor unluckily had his tractor in for servicing at Lismore Engineering in town, and like every other tractor that was on the premises, it got inundated by floodwaters. Now, as you can imagine, you can't just go to a tractor dealer and say, hey, I'll have another one exactly the same, please. And even if you could, you need to actually get it fitted out with a harvester, which can take a long period of time. So they're not immediately replaceable. Look, cars aren't immediately replaceable anymore either, but it's a lot harder to replace than a car because of the custom machinery that's needed. So, look, some harvest contractors, thankfully, still have their tractors there. There's some out at Dunoon, there's some sort of in higher ground where they'll be able to harvest. And as you can see from those nuts there, I haven't pushed them into the ground with my mower. In general, I've avoided them. And it's really the herbicide that's allowed me to avoid mowing where those nuts are, because that would cause a bit more loss. So yes, some contractors have lost their machinery. The spare parts companies, the service companies, all based in Lismore, have either temporarily moved to Bar or somewhere else. They're trying to provide service, but of course you're hearing stories of delays in providing parts, everything else. What else happened in the flood for macadamia farmers? Well, look, there's some good and bad news. I mean, I was going to be the subject of extremely bad luck in that I had so much fertilizer waiting to be spread by a company called Best Spread. They were very good at what they do, but very overloaded with work. And regrettably, we had my October order of fertilizer came in at just before the flood. Brilliant timing. Some granular fertilizer I got in to replace the Eco Growth, 13 tons of silica booster pellets, and we had also there's my neighbour with his harvester. He's having a go at harvesting today. That takes some guts. Anyway, and then 4.4 tons of Oscal, a very concentrated pH remedy, a very fine lime put in prill form. That was going to go on my old blocks and try and correct the soil acidity. All of that was in the Best Spread shed, and all of that is probably now in the Pacific Ocean. But I thank my lucky stars I am with Norco. Norco isn't just a milk, although if I'm going to give a plug, I'll say buy Norco milk, buy Hinterland ice cream, buy anything by Norco. And this is why. They have stood by all their farmers who had fertiliser delivered to Best Spread, who they have a spreading relationship with, and they have agreed to replace the lot or credit the lot. And that is just fabulous. For me, that would have been a loss of something like $12,000 odd worth of material, and they're covering it. No need to fight No need to work out whether title had passed or whose insurance would pay for it or whether there was insurance at all, which was quite doubtful. So, look, God bless Norco. It's a farmer cooperative. They really are there for farmers. It's not just a blurb. They've stood by their people. Best Spread themselves, on the other hand, who are the fertiliser spreading company used all over the northern rivers, with specialised trucks that really put out fertiliser accurately and efficiently. Unfortunately, their trucks, I'm told, have all been lost, or at least their engines would be inoperable, and it will be a while, 6 months at least, before they're up and running again, if they ever run again. And look, they're nice people there. I really do wish them the best. I hope that some insurance can cover what it is they've lost, and that they can be back on deck, because otherwise, you know, credit or no credit from Norco, I'm not going to be able to get fertiliser on these trees, and it really needs some fertiliser now, both because they haven't been fed since spring, and also because after a flood, the soluble nutrients in the soil, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the things that are readily available to a tree are also readily available to be leached out by the heavy rain, and it needs replenishing. The trees are flushing. You can see new growth here, but they need energy to flower for next spring, and there isn't terribly much time to give them that energy before they go into sleep mode for winter. So we're looking at options for that, and there's potentially some manure company that can do some spreading that I'm looking into, but we'll see exactly how far we get with that. In the meantime, we have to focus on that harvest season, and I have a ton of work to do. The mower can handle what you see in front of you, but I'll have to get on the big old Kubota tractor and slash some of the rest to actually get it down, particularly on block 6, where I haven't been able to mow regularly at all. And that's, look, the big tractor and the slasher, funnily enough, for a city person turned farmer, the big tractors aren't as much of a problem. They're easier to use than a zero-turn mower, and a little bit more steady on their feet as well. But it's still a bit of a challenge, bit of a sort of a lump in your throat as you get into a great big machine and start driving it around paddocks. I'm sure for some of you watching this, that is entirely normal, and that feeling disappeared many years ago. But if you never lose that feeling, you just give me a note of comfort in the comments below. Now, I'm conscious that Nutkin Farm's actually got off very lightly. There are other stories of people in the sugarcane flats who've basically been completely inundated, and I've seen pictures. I've seen a picture sent to me by Maddie Kelby of a bunch of very dead-looking baby trees. Some of them are apparently re-sprouting, but whether they're sprouting from the graft or the base would be a big question mark. There are farms on the sugarcane flats with maturing trees that have been completely wiped out, if not washed away. Look, I feel very sorry for them. I've never regarded farming on sugarcane flats as being a safe idea. And having said that, though, the floods we've experienced are beyond anything anyone could have predicted. So you can't criticise them for having a go at it. And certainly the land's beautiful and flat in the best of times, and you could probably get a fantastic crop. But there's going to be a loss of production and a loss of future production as a result of this flood. As to the loss of production in the northern rivers and the Australian macadamia nut production, I'm going to discuss that a little more in the next video when we're talking about the impacts on price, which are going to be quite sensitive this year. Righto, folks, thanks for tuning in. Sorry that the tone of the video's been a little bit downbeat. You'll never wipe the smile off my face, or at least it'll take more than what it is. Just thought I'd finish by showing you how mud can get even in the deepest tracks of farm equipment and become very, very useless when it comes to fighting slopes. And so the message from that is take care out there. The work needs to be doing, and I know we all really want to do it, but do it carefully and do it slowly if you have to, and we'll all get through it alive. Thanks for watching, guys. Goodbye for now.